Street Fighter Alpha 3 was released in arcades in the summer of 1998. Once again, much of the artwork and the interface were redone. There was a new soundtrack as well as new themes for many of the characters. The game provided a massive overhaul to the Alpha series by featuring many of the options available from the prior Alpha games as well as Super Turbo. This came in the form of different playing styles known as isms. A-ism was the standard playing style which retained the traditional Street Fighter Alpha style with its 3-level super combo gauge and various super combo moves. X-ism was based on Super Turbo's single-level super combo gauge for a single but more powerful super combo move, but disabled air blocking. V-ism was much more difficult to master but allowed for Alpha 2's custom combos without the use of air blocks and counterattacks. Alpha 3 also introduced the guard power gauge, which would decrease every time a character blocked an attack. If the gauge emptied, the player would be briefly vulnerable to an attack. The original Alpha 2 roster returned along with many more characters, both new and familiar. Alpha 3 brought back Cammy as a selectable character, as well as Street Fighter 2's E Honda, Blanca, and Vega. From Final Fight, there was Cody, who now looks like an escaped convict. New characters included the female wrestler R. Mika and Karen Kanzuki, a rival to Sakura. Secret characters to the arcade version were Balrog and M. Bison's bodyguards Junie and Julie. When the game was ported to consoles, even more characters were added to Alpha 3's roster. In its initial release on the PlayStation, Balrog, Junie, and Julie were now selectable characters. There was also the remaining cast of Street Fighter 2 with Fei Long, DJ, T-Hawk, and Guile, as well as Shin Akuma and Evil Ryu. However, one of the biggest features in the console version was the World Tour mode, which allowed players to build on their characters' attributes through various matches. This mode gave the game even more replay value with its RPG elements and customization features. In 1999, Alpha 3 was ported to the Dreamcast and Sega Saturn. For the Dreamcast, it was released under the title Street Fighter Alpha 3 Saikyo Dojo. This port had all the features of the PlayStation version as well as the new Saikyo Dojo mode and online leaderboards. Another port was released in 2000 that added an online versus mode but was only released as a mail-order title via Dreamcast Direct in Japan only. In 2001, another update was released in arcades across Japan called Street Fighter 03 Upper. The game ran on updated hardware and featured all the updates from the prior console versions. It also featured VMU memory slots that allowed players to upload their customized characters from the Dreamcast version. In 2002, it was ported to the Game Boy Advance by Crawfish Interactive as Street Fighter Alpha 3 Upper. The GBA port also added 3 more characters, Eagle from Street Fighter, Maki from Final Fight, and Yoon from Street Fighter 3. In 2006, Alpha 3 was ported again to the PSP entitled Street Fighter Alpha 3 Max. New to the roster was Ingrid from Capcom Fighting Evolution. Street Fighter Alpha 3 would be the last Street Fighter game that was worked on by Yoshiki Okamoto before he started Flagship, a division of Capcom that concentrated on games in the Resident Evil universe. The Street Fighter Alpha series has definitely become a fan favorite among the Street Fighter franchise. Its depth of characters and fighting styles provided an incredible amount of challenge and longevity for anyone looking for it. At the same time, it created a sense of continuity between each of the Street Fighter games and its prior spin-offs. Despite originally being a spin-off itself, it is considered by many to be a worthy follow-up to the Street Fighter 2 series. When the idea of introducing younger versions of the Street Fighter characters proved successful for Capcom, it was taken to an even more extreme with another spin-off in an entirely different genre. Back in 1996, after the release of Street Fighter Alpha 2, Capcom released a new puzzle game titled Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo. The game featured super deformed versions of characters from Street Fighter Alpha and Darkstalkers. The structure of the game was based on Capcom's 1994 puzzle game Pnikis. In the game, the player must combine together pairs of blocks shaped like gems and eliminate them before their opponent does the same. The game's premise and unique art style helped to make it stand out from the fighting series its characters were based on, and offered a much more lighthearted feel when compared to it. With its fresh premise on the puzzle genre and addictive gameplay, Puzzle Fighter is widely regarded by fans as one of the best puzzle games ever made, despite not being an original formula. Like the Alpha series, the game was initially ported to the PlayStation and Sega Saturn. When it came to the Dreamcast, it introduced an online versus mode and 3 different gameplay modes. X mode was the original game mode rebalanced, while Y mode and Z mode made the gameplay system feel more akin to Sega's Columns and Nintendo's Tetris Attack, respectively. The game would be featured in other ports and compilations before it received another update in 2007 with Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo HD Remix. With this version came updated graphics and animations as well as redrawn characters and backgrounds. This new version was released on the PC, Xbox 360, and PlayStation Network. Not long after Puzzle Fighter was first introduced, Capcom took other super deformed versions of their fighting game characters and put them in their own new fighting game. This became known as Super Gem Fighter Mini Mix or just Pocket Fighter in Japan. Just like Puzzle Fighter before, the game had a lighthearted premise, but this time in a fighting game. The fighting system was toned down to be much easier to play while introducing combo moves that could be powered up by collecting fallen gems during a match. With the game's limited appeal to those normally interested in fighting games, Pocket Fighter was less popular than its puzzle spin-off and saw a much smaller initial release on the PlayStation, Sega Saturn, and WonderSwan. Fans saw the release of Street Fighter Alpha Anthology in 2006, which combined the Alpha games along with Super Gem Fighter Mini-Mix, and the return of Puzzle Fighter the following year. Despite their aged gameplay, these games have proven to be just as memorable and timeless among its fans, just as the original Street Fighter 2. What originally began as sidesteps for the franchise has now become some of its most memorable milestones. Street Fighter Alpha 3 had an incredible depth of options for a 2D fighting game even to this day and featured a recognizable cast, while Puzzle Fighter brought some of its memorable characters into an entirely new genre. Street Fighter had become more than just a successful fighting game series, but instead a franchise that could successfully exist in other genres as well. Today, both of these original spin-offs have surpassed the test of time and are commonly considered some of the best games of their respective genres. Even in the face of ongoing competition, Capcom had become successful once again with the Street Fighter franchise. Unfortunately, with any franchise that has become as large as Street Fighter, there will always be times that some fans would choose to forget, or perhaps already have. Next time in part 4 of this Street Fighter retrospective, Street Fighter takes on another new direction that leads to controversy among longtime fans. Some of the original cast makes a return along with a whole new set of fighters. With the help of a veteran developer, Capcom would bring Street Fighter into the third dimension for the first time.